Selbst dat we dachten ze meteen
Just with this.
No,
We
no.
don't want to do sense.
Next, ja, dat is wat dat doet.
Dus dan slaffen gewoon.
Je hebt een oogstopper.
Ja, slaffen gewoon. Alright. En doe je eens.
Nee, dat
Dat is geslagen.
Wie zijn ze gegaan?
is een Wasser in Dorf.
Oh, in Wasser. Shurikens.
Weißt was, in Polen, wenn die Kern früher, ist das nicht also viel geschlafen?
In de 38
Wir fliegen nach hinten, mit dem Nach.
Die Nazi dort gekriegt. Die Nazi.
Ja, ich gedenk, nein, ich hatte der angeschrieben, ist ja ganz noch jeder nennen, da weiß ein paar nach.
Wie zijn het geweest?
A loose translation is, he used to take me walking very late at night in lodge. And his father said, if he did that again, he was throwing out of the house while I was there.
He told him in Polish.
Told him in Polish, but I got the message. And so did he. Jetzt schläft as I say it. Right. So what is it you want to know? Oh, we should first identify ourselves. We are sitting here. We're not the only ones, but we're the only ones here. Are the grandchildren of a common ancestor we have decided to designate today as the focal point. We are the grandchildren of Yehuda Leib Winograd and his wife Bracha, whose maiden name was Wengel. I have been told an astonishing thing just recently, that they married when she was 14 and he's 17. I cannot resist putting this in. And right, that was
It was a great love affair.
it. Was
She met him at the hood.
Anyhow, here we are,
20 minutes long.
and the descendants here, this is a special occasion because Mata, who is here, doesn't come often. He's from Munich, and he is the son of Yehuda Leib named Yaakov. Here's Jack, who lives in Denver, who is the son of Esther, a daughter of the same couple. And two of us are siblings of the same father and mother, Harold and Eleanor, whose father is Abe, remains Abe. So
remains.
So all of your parents were brother and sister, right?
Right. But only three parents were represented here, since Harold and I had the same parents.
That's
Okay,
right.
I want to make that.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay. Where's Larry, by the way?
He hasn't arrived yet, but he still fits that same description, same.
No,
father.
Different
doesn't have the same
mother.
mother, but
Same
same
father.
father, on the Winograd side. That's right.
His chair is right there.
Elijah's.
What's supposed to be with it? What would you all like to know?
Well,
Start with,
starting with what I would like to know.
Yeah.
So,
Sie will gewollt wissen, was hat ihr getan? Vater noch Hanne. Kasendler, du bist gewesen doch ein junger Mann. Du bist doch gewesen ein sehr junger Mann. Ja, 1936, wenn ich bin dort gewesen. Was ist dir getan? Gearbeitet? Fabrik. Explain.
now can you translate what you just
He said he had a factory in 1936. The question I asked him, for example, when I was there in 1936, what did you do? He said, I had a factory. This man in Swansea, we developed Swansea. He was 21, I became 20 that year. Dit is alleen de wijn, de eigentümer van de fabriek, de schade van het
Koran zegt met twee nog.
Twee schiffen,
Alleen nog dubbels.
niet kruiven.
Twee schiffen, geloof ik, gedaan. Lange tijd.
So he almost forgot what he says. He believes he had two partners, and he doesn't think they were related. They were not
and
friends.
what was the factory?
Oh, was ist, wenn da Betriebe Klar?
Textile.
Not knitting.
I remember, I was a boy, a young boy of 14, 15. I used to come up to his factory and help him. He used to need some help in doing like threading needles, a special thing in textile work. Now I guess it's a different system, probably goes automatically. But in those days, we had to thread needles by hand. So he would, let's say, push in and I would have to pull it out from the other side. There were thousands of needles.
You mean the needles along the looms?
Along the loom. You know, those little, the shafts that go up and down, or the needles up and down, you know. And then that bobbin would run, the bobbin would run back and forth. Rijden. En die is, ja, je gaat hem geholpen. And then the bobbin, you know, was running back and forth, you know. So those needles. Dus spijtig, en je kunt, nou dus kun je die beschouwen. Bij mij deed je nou wel om zo'n 16, 17 jaar. Dus zie je al geweest. De 16, toch al weer 16.
16, je hebt een gewend wel 20. En wees
Nou,
was.
dat is nog spijt. Maar mij ga je spijt.
Je hebt gezegd in dein Familie.
Ja, dat moet er gaan.
Keiner des gearbeitet, das wenn bei Nacht, das wird genommen sein. Ein großen Zimmer, one large room. I saw his factory when I was there in 1936.
They were actually weaving.
They actually wove textiles. When I went there, they were closed for the night. There were large rows of machinery, and according to Jack, they were still handled by hand. Apparently, the bobbins.
See, I'm not going to give you a lecture on textiles, but if you saw a loom, if you notice a loom, the things that go up and down, through these things down, the shuttle, yeah, and a shuttle like this has like hundreds of needles. It's sort of like a wire with a little needle with an eye in the middle.
So they threaded
the thread would go down. So there were a few shuttles different. One time this would go up, and when those would and when it would go up, would bring up an amount of threads, right? And the bobbin would go through like this.
Shuttle
and then there was a bar, what they call it, I don't know, that you know, tight, right?
And were the employees Jewish? How many employees? And were they Jewish employees or Polish employees?
Dat kan je nog niet komen. Het meeste Gooisch christelijke vrouwen. Eén vrouw had gearbeitet op 4 machines. En mannen, meestal werden met vrouwen. One woman would work on four looms. And while the looms were working, she would just keep an eye on them. If a thread broke, she would stop it and then tie it down better.
Was this woolens or synthetic or cotton?
There was no synthetic, it was cotton mostly. Cotton.
People.
One second,
It was
I
the
took
size, and really it wasn't primitive. I thought it was state of the art to this day after blacks.
It was very primitive compared to today because I was 3 years ago I was in South America in Uruguay, and my friend has a modern factory down there, and it's just unbelievable. In the olden days, those bobbins were being pushed back and forth through like little arms, an arm with the motor would push like this and would push that thing back and forth. Nowadays they go by air. Those bobbins, little bobbins that carry the thread back and forth by air. Yes, yeah.
Sag mal, eigens gekonnten Fabrik, was ist dir getan? Keine Schule, was ist Was war eine Schule? Ist es gewesen dort eine jüdische Schule damals? Zu alle gleich? Before, I asked what he did before he owned this factory. He did go to school. And it was a Jewish school, it was a jüdische Schule. Sind gehabt jüdische Schulen?
Was it not religious? Not religious.
This is because the Polish system had Jewish schools and non-Jewish schools. Yeah, they were private. They were private.
Oh yeah.
So there was no religious education.
Es ist nicht gewesen religiös, speziell. Oh, you could get some secular.
One of the subjects was religion. It was a public school.
Public school bin ich eigentlich.
No.
Public school bin gegangen.
Wie viele Gegenden sind gegangen? The
Nee.
public school. Public
Hier van mir, weet wacht een minute. Bloisiden, the letters ik weet niet geen nooit. The public school that I went to, it was just, it wasn't co-educational. The public school, and the students were all Jews. The teachers, some of them were non-Jews, some teachers, but most of them were Jews, and the students were all Jews.
All boys.
All boys, right?
And what did you study?
All subjects, Polish, mathematics, history, geography, all these, physics, all these subjects.
High school?
No. Elementary school. Elementary school.
Was haben die
Jo, noch
gehabt?
nicht, bei mir bei Konstanten. Bloissidische Kinder.
Was haben die gehabt? Eine private Schule, so das gekent game
Wat ik ken.
in a public.
Ze gewezen Jiddische gymnasiums, ze gewezen.
But
There were Jewish,
die jüdische Gehele gestützt ein jüdische
Nee.
Sie wird geld, dan heb je kost geld.
high schools were not free. High
High
school,
school.
elementary school was free.
High school.
Seven grades was free. And then after that, if somebody could afford it, he went to high school. For instance, he went to high school, went to gymnasium Steve. But he was done by Shakinet. I didn't go to high school. But whoever could afford
Went to high
went to high school. I have a friend who lives now in Florida, and they were very poor. His father was a locksmith, so he did repairs for the Hebrew school. It was a Hebrew Jewish, high school, but the school couldn't afford to pay him, so they said, "Send your boy to school." So he's the only one from our gang, the poorest boy, who went to high school.
Because
We
his
didn't.
father worked out his
Yeah.
tuition.
Did
Wojciech went to high school.
He went to high school, right?
Das
All
Gymnasium.
of his,
Nicht gehen. Was ist passiert, ist das nicht
Ik
gehen?
heb ons gehouden met mijn moederbedrijf.
He got ulcers.
Ulcer, yeah.
Son ulcers. He got ulcers.
Nee,
His stomach was no good and he quit school. And then what was his
Nee, ik ben
En wat-
high school en dan nog de winnaar aan de tweede en ik kan de waarschijnlijk. Niet ergens in high school. Dus niet gegaan.
Nicht high school.
Nee,
But the
einmal ik ga de kleed hebben staat in de Sie gewinnen high school gegangen. Dat hat uns gekregen, weil es eine dicke Geschichte, aber es ist nicht so geboren. High school gegangen, denke ich, so ich habe gegangen.
Dein Tat is great.
Mein Tat, ich weiß, was geheißen hat,
He says in the high schools, people when we're out.
let me clarify with him. High school, mein Gymnasium.
Jo, ich bin gar nicht von diesem Tugend.
Ook je bent niet aan het gymnasium op de Kioskeri.
So soll ich das tun. Weil die Kind gehen nach Schule, in einer Volksschule, das hat nicht gekostet.
Ja.
Und bei uns sind alle Kinder gegangen in die Schule, das gekostet.
Yeah, all of them went to high school.
He says his family was well enough off, so I think.
What did his father do?
He had a sugar business. Oh, sein Tate gehabt
Zucker
business. Stationary, because of
Zucker.
remember?
In Polen wird Zucker ein Monopol.
A monopoly. In Poland, sugar was a monopoly.
Nicht jeder kennt Handel mit Zucker.
But they had become
Nicht hat eine ganze Kompanie, in der Größe, Sachen,
Yeah.
Shit von
Shit,
Sachen.
yeah.
Sachen
There were
Wir kommen Adam, nehmen wir auf Zucker.
So
Und
they
das
got
Handeln
the
von Zucker,
privilege of handling
und
sugar.
das Handeln von Zucker geht nicht in Kilo, in
exact. They were wholesalers,
Wholesalers.
distributors, Poltovnikis.
Yeah.
Bei den Zucker, kannst du dir vorstellen, ein Sack Zucker von 100 Kilo, der verdient eine Mark. Ein Sack, ein Kilo Zucker kann er zu der Bahn, hat gekostet, wie 100 Kilo Zucker, eine Mark.
Een zlotte.
Ein Zloty.
This is billig.
Ein Kilo Zucker,
Dat is billig. En het is niet billig. Het is niet
Give us
billig.
an example. What did
I'll
he?
give you an example. A kilo sugar was one zloty. For that zloty, you could buy 20 Kaiser dolls.
And a kilo is 2
For
pounds.
for 1 kilo sugar was the equivalent of 20 Kaiser rolls.
So
20 Zammelten can kopen.
So you would say it was expensive?
Expensive. Like $1, officially $1 was like 5 zlotys and 20 groschen. So sugar was expensive, right?
In school, did you speak Yiddish or Polish in the school?
Not school Polish. Yiddish auch.
No.
Polish in the schools.
Polish.
Schools.
In the
And were there schools for girls?
wij zijn Nederland gegaan, nee, no, not education.
No, but there were
Separate schools.
And did the girls go to school?
Of course.
Yeah,
Separate and equal.
Danish
Yeah.
Festivals at the public schools.
Yes.
Like this, for middle students.
Yeah, there was a school,
Sisters went.
there was no co-education.
Did either of you go to Hader? Hebrew or
Oh
Yiddish?
yeah, I went out and maybe you can hide it, some kind of hide it.
Nee, dat is dus gehad van bar mitzvah.
Aber mit Snap, ja.
Yo.
Nee, dat is ja.
Oh, ja.
Maar dat is dus gegaan in de Verenigde Staten met vrede.
Kleine Schule, die ist
Oh, die
Schule.
Een dagschule, niet bij een
He went to a Jewish school, so he did some studying of Hebrew things in
Oh,
his,
bank.
In his elementary school.
Ja,
in
maar
his,
ik
high school.
So
that's one of the subjects.
And did they both have bar mitzvah?
Met al in bij dat nu ook al. Aha.
But then
So,
was the Gilal Davin
He went to a high school
to his high
Jewish
school that was
school
Jewish.
where they were teaching that Hebrew classes too. They taught how to pray.
But the day school.
And
So
But
he
no,
learned
my
that.
school no. My school no. I went
This
to
is
Hader
Gilal. I still
when I
have.
was a kid, you know, starting maybe 6, 7 years. I started in Hader after school.
And
I
that's
used
how
to
you
have to
prepared
go.
for bar mitzvah.
so
Yeah.
he learned his Jewish things in school and you learned your Jewish things in Jewish school.
Just like today.
Yeah.
Some go to day
Yeah.
school and
And some
some.
go to public school and Hebrew school after.
And it
Was
was
Lodge-
cheaper not to go to day school.
Was it divided? Did the Jews live in one part and the Christians in the other part?
Most of the time, yes, there were Jewish sections.
He
Where
went to
there
the
were
school until he was
the
14.
Christians most of the time were the janitors. Could be an apartment house. See, the apartment houses were closed in boxes, like, and every house would have had like 20, let's say 20, 30 apartments. Most of them were Jewish. And most of the time, the janitor was non-Jewish. He was like, you say, a Shabbos goy. Shabbos, you know, to make light the oven or something, that he would come up. But most of the houses, they were Jews. My house,
And was it a
was
Was it a shtetl in the sense of having, like, in Russia, was it a ghetto or?
No, there were no ghettos.
No.
There were no ghettos.
In
There
Warsaw,
was a concentration of Jews. This was a huge city in
in
Warsaw.
Warsaw, there was a ghetto. Yeah?
Well, no, not called ghetto. I went there every day of my life and I was there for 5 days. It was open and closed.
It
People
had
went
been
out
a
to
ghetto,
work.
really.
But there were walls around the Jewish sector, right?
Where?
In
In
Warsaw?
Warsaw, they had a gate, it was a Yiddish section, but it
But-
wasn't a closed.
But
gate.
part of it is that they had an,
It's from, there was at one
No,
of them.
was it an
Not a
Eruv?
real ghetto.
Was it an Eruv?
No, in Warsaw, there was a Jewish neighborhood,
The
where
Jewish
Jews lived,
section.
you know.
They said you go through the gate, that's where you
Yeah,
find.
no, there were no fences or gates on the thing.
So in New York,
Yeah, Williamsburg, you know, you have a section that Jews
Like
live.
it's a
That's how
section.
like in Denver, you had the west side, it was a Jewish
In
neighborhood.
1936, I was stuck in Warsaw at a place called the Hotel Francuska, may it rot,
Francuski, yeah.
waiting
Probably got
for-
bombed.
waiting for
The
my
French said that.
suitcase, which did not arrive till someone told me to bribe the station master. So every day for 5 days, they told me how to go to the Jewish section, which I went to explore there, and I could go through a gate. But that was only directions, you know, I could go, I guess, other ways. But I visited Chaim Schmitz's relatives one day, and I had a haircut in Yiddish. I had haircuts in every language. And I went every day, you know, but it was definitely a Jewish section, there's no question. It was a Jewish world,
Yeah.
a Jewish world in that.
And Lodge was like that too.
When you
Yeah.
say it was a Jewish world, what do you mean? What was
I
it?
didn't live there.
So I'll give you a small example. For instance, in Lodge.
Signs were Jewish.
For instance, in Lodge, in the Jewish neighborhood where most of the Jews lived, at the time of Kol Nidra, you could see hardly a person in the street.
Like New York on Yom Kippur. That's a
Little
Jewish
tafels,
world.
die alleen in de jongen, in unsere Gegend.
That's
But then after that,
Wie hat jetzt damals gewonnen?
it's a point of space because
It's
it's
like the east side.
and that's a point of projection. Nee,
Except more so.
oh, nee.
Ik heb nooit anders gezeten.
No, wie has gezien dat de slushie mee zag komen? No problem. And then after the services, it was mobbed, the whole. This was the Jewish section.
Yeah, you know, Yivo has put out a
New
film
York, Brooklyn, dan
on
weet ik.
Jews of old Poland before the war that you haven't seen, you ought to. You'll really get a feel for it. It's not our family, it's everybody's
The
family.
lodge.
But I want to tell you, the streets they show, the Yivo shows on this film by the famous filmmaker, who naturally I forget, could have been a description of my, it was like the street I walked on. There's no question, it's identical. That's the street I walked on in 1936. That happens to be 55 years ago. 55 years ago. But they describe, what they show in the movie is exactly how Poland looked in my day.
Lodge
It was,
gehad.
it was a enormous
Million
that was the, not the steppe,
Dat zie je wel eens.
but that was the world of Eastern European Jewry. Its cradle, its cultural center with its theaters and its newspapers and its barber shops.
Die
And its
draven.
all, the language was Yiddish, the people were all collected. By the way, Muttick said some time ago that he ended his school that he described at 14
Jo,
and ended a technical
No,
school where he learned
kennis.
the trade of
Kennis.
for the craft or skill of weaving. Remember that he qualified
the
himself
bounce of
14.
the
Kennis van Jack, die als de betrapt.
All right, now,
Je kent dat niet.
we have a
you
look.
invaded
Als
it.
je gehad 750 Leute, dat is kennis.
That's not too bad.
750
He wants to make it a place.
This is not
He
possible.
disagrees.
Give this is given on Rice.
Ja, aber sie, Denver hat heute eine halbe Million.
No, Denver and the surrounding.
Okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
Okay, can you tell the funniest story you can remember from Lux? Each of you
What?
tell the funniest story that you can remember of something that
From
happened.
New York. Good thanks.
Heb je zo'n humoristische zaak
passeel.
In
En
Lodge.
was er geen humoristische zaak passeel. In de Mohammed.
Dus
Ich habe gegeben nur einen Brief, wo es der Vetter was mein Vater geschrieben einen Brief zu Deitag, aber den Brief. Als Sie mehr wissen, wie ich habe jetzt den ganzen Buch mit dem Brief.
He says if you look at the correspondence, which I have and I've shared with between his father and mine, you will know more about what happened there than anything he could tell you all day, and that is God's truth. I was going over a lot of them again. I paid to have somebody translate it because the handwriting is not Dad's, but people who wrote to him. I could hardly do it. And some things are, you really get a feeling for the culture, so-called. Some things were very disappointing to you. It wasn't a very elegant culture, a lot of them. These were times before the war that Poland, was activating economics,
Yeah,
sehr schlecht.
That
Zeer.
was the
They were in a depression crisis in Poland. Jeden Wort ist dann Tat bestimmt, mein Tat, und hat noch Hanossa bisschen in the Zuckerbusiness, is gewähnt, wie schlecht es ist. Every word his father wrote to my father, for instance, was how dreadful the economy was. And dann noch einmal gefragt, mein Tat, wie geht bei dir Geschäften? Verkaufst immer. So and how's business with you, he wrote my father. This is I would say the late 20s. Late 20s, it was already very bad. He would ask Dad, how's your business? What are you doing now? And then later read other letters. But the flavor of what Poland was for the Jew in that time, of course you can get it through the correspondence. I want to ask them something. This Mr. Kent, the Bobenzega from Dallas. He did not know our
I didn't know.
grandparents in Yala.
I don't
Isn't
remember
that
that.
interesting? Aber
Also,
das
na
ist
Multi
der Beginn.
Sind
Sondern nur wenn zu Gast.
Zu Gast, ja.
They were as guests in this house, but Jack doesn't remember
Zijn
them.
er geen lodge?
Ja.
Boven met een
Sie
zijde?
gerade akkompaniert.
Yeah, no, mas a
I
photograph.
don't remember.
Ja?
I
He
don't
was nicht
remember.
gewesen in Biala.
Nee.
Ich bin echt
Nee.
ja.
They never went to Biala. His sister Tosha went to Biala when I visited in 1936. She went with me. And that was the first time she had ever been in Biala. I find that very difficult to comprehend. We think of it as the same country, you know, Poland here. But there it was, Biala, and they had none of them been to visit
No.
from Lodz. There is a letter, es ist der Jehovah Brief von den Zazeden. Aber schreibt wie der Bobbe, es gewinnt es folgen Walsche, sein Adopter. I have a letter from our grandfather who describes to my father that our grandmother, his wife, was sick, apparently sick enough to look for a specialist in Warsaw, and that she stayed there with Esther, Chaim Yossel's sister, in Warsaw, that she stayed with a cousin, a granddaughter of hers, in a little apartment that I remember in Vasha, but she doesn't say, he says nothing about being in Lodz at that time.
No.
But apparently they came on state occasions.
So how many?
Fight is Biala from Lodz.
Dat kent 8 kilometer. Nog daar is het onderzoek geweest in de 20 en de 30 kilometer. Ja, en dus op kind als je nog in dat kilometer van waar je nog Jallo.
Yeah, it's gewend wie weit.
52 kilometer.
150 miles.
In 150 miles.
And with transportation as it was,
That was a
we
big
didn't have
trip.
the auto. I went by train. It was a day's trip, sort of, in 1936.
How many of the brothers and sisters stayed in Biala, and how many were in Lodz? And
Well,
who
they
was-
weren't specifically in Biala. As a matter of fact, they were not born in Biala, the older generation. They were born in a town called Yashvin. I found that out. And later, our grandparents moved to Biala, if you will, in retirement. In Yashvin, they had land, which I didn't think was possible. But in some of the correspondence, they speak of selling off land. Remember, I read you, and it seemed very unlikely that it was true. Because Dave remembered. But it wasn't how many stayed in Biala and how many didn't. They married in small villages all the way around. I had an aunt in a place called Shedlitz, and someone else. We had, my grandfather had a sister. Bezrich. Es ist gewesen als Schwester und die Shedlitz went Fagin. Fagin Moschke. Sie geheiratet an Alman. She married a widower that's crazy. Seine gewesen, seine sie. Anyhow, nach Deutschland in Biala. Die Zatorski sind gewesen in Biala, und gewesen bei sich.
Jallo.
Biala, das ist nicht gewesen in Biala. Die ist mit der Schwester.
Can they maybe describe something about what they can recall of family life? You know, like the
Ich
family.
will wissen, kannst du denken, was they did every day.
Family
Es
life.
gewesen dein Familienleben mit der Tante Mama, mit der Schwester, mit dem Bruder. Mit aufgestanden war früh, mit dem, weißt du was, ein Gäste Frühstück. Oh, they got up, they ate breakfast. I started. I know, I was there.
Okay.
Bacon and eggs.
Bacon and eggs.
Danach,
Jetzt von 36.
yeah, danach,
I remember, and I didn't go, I never went to Biala to see my grandparents, but I remember the year that war broke out in 1939, my mother and my 2 sisters, the ones who live in Israel, Fela and Tamala, and my nephew, I had an older sister, her name was Kenya, she was born in 1940.
a little older than I.
Yeah, she was born, I had also an older brother who was born in 1916. He died in the ghetto of hunger. As a matter of fact, he died on D-Day, June the 6th, 1944. He died of starvation. And my sister Henya, with her little boy, I don't remember now little Sebek, how old he was. They were sent out in 1942 to an extermination camp. So my mother, my two sisters, and this little nephew, they went to Biala for the summer in 1939. And they came back shortly before the Germans invaded. Shortly before the Germans invaded Poland. So they, they went for the summer, and that's the first and only time that they met the grandparents. But I never met them.
Just go back.
Eso es una kleine Wojciech. It's terms I guess.
No,
He doesn't remember.
I don't remember ever
I find that
seeing
so
the rest of
impossible.
the family. For instance, the cousins like Esther, there were those are first cousins. There was a sister, Javi. Then there was Javi and Zipporah and Haniosel and Esther, right? So they all came to Lodge and they all stayed with us.
So you didn't know that?
Them I knew. First Javi, she was a millinery
These are
worker,
sisters.
a beautiful woman, a
Whose children
beautiful
were this?
girl.
These are first cousins of ours.
Yeah.
From another
aunt, another sister, another
Which sister?
And the Javi, did you know Javi committed suicide?
Yes.
Yeah, she fell in love with some kind of a nobody, a tailor, a hunchback. She fell in love with him, and for some reason, I don't know what happened, she committed
Do you
suicide.
know what the family said then? The family said that she committed suicide because she grieved so over her mother who was dying of cancer.
Oh, so then later Haniosel came to Lodge, and he was about to be 21.
Their family
And this
name was Zuckerman.
Zuckerman, yeah. And I remember he came to Lodge, he stayed with us, and I remember I would wake up in the middle of the night and he would pacing the floor. It was before he had to go to the army,
The
the
draft.
doctor, to the draft. Yeah, to conscription. So he paced the floor, and I remember he was drinking lemon juice in
He was
order not to
trying
have enough weight, to just to escape the draft.
Met
Die
zijn opgezaagd.
gaan Jassel als gemosje, dat is gewoon klein
Yes,
beetje.
it's gemosje, whatever that means.
Gemosje.
It means to take off weight, I guess.
Yeah, he tried like he fasted. Like he fasted.
To be too skinny.
Right.
Did he succeed?
So I remember I was a kid.
Yeah,
he was, and that,
He was
at that time
schizophrenic, but that's all right. He didn't know that they wouldn't take him in.
yeah. So and then he went to Palestine, and then the younger sister Esther, she had at that time a little boy. They lived in Warsaw, and her husband was a Schlemazel.
It's called a Luftmensch.
Yeah, he couldn't make a living, so he decided he'll go overseas, and he went to Uruguay, to Montevideo. And so she was left alone, so she came to Lodge, and she stayed with us. Don't forget, we were 5 children in the house, and mother, because my father died when I was 10 years old. And she came with a little boy, we all stayed in the same apartment, and I don't remember how long he stayed in Montevideo, but shortly before the war, he came back on a cattle ship. He couldn't afford to come back on a regular. Somehow he scraped enough money to come back on a cattle ship. And I saw her, the last time I saw her, when he saw her. When the Germans already came to Lodge, and he escaped to Warsaw, and then to Russia. I escaped to Warsaw, and then I went back to Lodge. Because
Maybe would he tell something with his escape?
dat zei jetzt, wie er so Liebesanflug mit
Ja,
Lodge.
so-
Can you tell, like, what happened as the Germans were coming to Lodge, and then what you did?
Well, I'll tell you what I know. When the Germans came in, before even the Germans came in, we able-bodied men, we started running away towards Warsaw. So I
You knew
remember.
before that they were coming across the border? You knew
Oh yeah,
before
we knew they were already on the march.
knew.
Yeah, they were already on the march.
Bombed the hell out of Warsaw.
So we started running away. I was there, my brother-in-law and my brother, and I remember that's
Why did you rent the-
Isaac is ook gelaufen.
Ze verwazen. Waar was het nu gelaufen? Nog was.
Maar gezegd aan de Deutsche,
Het is een bisschen.
je hebt het zijn maas.
Weet je, zijn zij.
Ja.
Ich kenne auch die Mann, also, wenn der bekommen Whisky braucht. Ist in 3, in 5 Tagen, ich will Deutsch für die Deutsch. In 5 Tagen sind
His memory is that after the war broke out, the Germans had lunch in 5 days.
Wie so gemacht die Mobilisation, so eine Stunde in Zigin, und am Hof geht das ist schon die Deutschen gewesen.
Why lots so
In der
quickly?
Stutt, wegen
They started marching.
Was it close? It was
Was
close
it
to the border.
Was it close to the border?
After the Germans crossed the border,
Yes,
they just
The
kept
Russians
marching.
and the Germans got together and divided Poland in 1939.
Right.
And
Verstehst du?
and the Nazis attacked Poland.
Also wie so ungerezipiert bekommen, und schon die polnische Armee schon gesagt und schon gegeben, aber durch die Radio sie gehen, als alle müssen Soldaten gewesen, du müssen gehen, du, in alle müssen gehen, du, sonst ich gerade keinen richtigen Platz, ich bin
Their army was destroyed, the authorities
The Polish army.
It's the
Yeah.
Polish
They
army.
did put up resistance, but it was
At
like.
first, but on the radio, they gave orders, you go here, you go there. They gave places to run.
No, mostly they said to go to Warsaw,
To Warsaw.
to defend Warsaw. Obronę Warszawy.
Now, when you ran away to Warsaw, did your family encourage you to run away? What was happening in Lodz with the rest of the family?
Wenn es gewiss, ob man gehabt dies wegen Mobilisation, dies haben wir ungeheuer, gerade prima verschiedene die Männer.
Sie bist gegangen für Mobilisation, für die Soldaten, meinst du?
Nicht gegangen direkt, aber so schon geriefen.
They were calling people, the young men, to mobilize,
So mobilized to run to Warsaw,
To
to
save
defend Warsaw,
Warsaw.
the capital.
to defend Warsaw. These were radio.
This is Polish radio asking
Yeah,
all
yes.
young
Yeah.
people.
All young men.
Before
So
the
that-
Germans took it
You asked
over.
why they ran to Warsaw, and this is right.
And then what did your mother say when you were going? Was this
In
considered
der
something?
Ungarn, in der gegangen, ich und mein Bruder.
He and his brother.
Bei uns.
Genoeg, maar dat is ook niet. Dan inzien we gelopen hier met moeilijke gemaakt. Het gedenkt dat ze me daar vergeet. Isaac is ook met ons gelopen. So we started running away. Our mother, the mothers encouraged us because they said that the men will be suffering under the Germans. So the men started running away. But in this case, this was right in the first days of September. The Germans crossed probably already, and then we decided to run away. We started marching towards, not Brzezin, towards a place called Brzezin.
By what means did you go?
We walked. So we had to walk in the ditches, because the whole highway, so to speak, the road, was full of military, with horses, and the way everything was horses most of the time. Was full, and we had to walk in the ditches.
This is Polish military?
Yeah, Polish military was running away from
Yeah, I
Warsaw,
mean,
towards
Polish
Warsaw.
guards.
Polish military. And I'll never forget, we went through a small village that was occupied by ethnic Germans, and they were shooting from the houses at the Polish military. Die weiß ich wegen
Yeah,
dem.
the Germans were waiting.
Ik denk je nog wat zullen nog geweest op weg als regime. Ze zijn een Duitse mensen, dan Duitse boys. Zo die schoss nog willen steken in de hazen. The Deutsch. Then it's an unpleasant. So, and then, so when we came into this place, Brzezin, on the way towards Warsaw, we came in, it was already, maybe 10 o'clock at night. And for some reason, I don't know what happened, the Germans started dropping flares. It got light as during the day. And they were starting shooting from all sides.
Well, the flare was to light up the target.
And the road, I'm telling you, the road was packed with Polish military. So it was such a panic. And we saw, where are you going to, so we decided we're going to go back. We came only to this place of Brzezin, and we started walking back. And on the way back, I remember we saw, dead bodies laying there. And we finally got back, and this was just in the beginning.
Back to Lodge.
Back to Lodge. We came back to Lodge.
Did you find your homes again? You went?
We went back to our
the
families.
homes.
And I'm pretty sure that we ran away before the Germans came into Lodge. Inside my gelaufen noch I there. Because before the Germans came in, and then I remember when we came back to Lodge, maybe a day later, I remember being on the main square there. Had wel dat zijn op plaats van Lusje ben ik geweest. A German soldier, a single German soldier, came in on a motorcycle, all dirty, on a motorcycle, came in and came to a fire station, parked his motorcycle there, and went in as if he was from there, as if he knew what he was doing. He must have been an ethnic German from Poland.
He knew the territory.
He knew the territory, because he went in there, we saw him look to the cracks in the fence, he went over, there was a basin with water, in the washtub there. Ik ga niet vergessen, als strażak, dat gedenkt zich naar strażak, wie dat zei, want ik zo vaak alleen in plaats van als je naar strażak meer was. Ja, gedenk, ik heb met ze voeren aan Deutsch. Eine der ersten Deutsche raak nog een motorcykel, spitzig, aangevoerd in plaats van als je, en dan aangevoerd door de geparkte, weggestellte motorcykel, en dan raak in de wijn, ik heb ook geen Aanfangsdeutsch, Deutsch. Gewiss wie guy, the ganze gange dort und so gewaschen dort. I'll never forget that. He was, see all the, Poland had so many Germans there. That everything, all the airplanes, I read stories, all the airplanes that the Polish military, they wanted to go to, they were all sabotaged, they wouldn't fly.
Because of the ethnic Germans.
Yeah, Lodz was a city that had 250,000 Jews, 250,000 Polish people, and 250,000 Germans.
No wonder the Polacks hated everybody. They felt outnumbered.
250,000 Germans. So we came back and waited the next day. I'll never forget when the German army came back. Die is gezegd geweest de Duitsen, de militairen.
Did he go on to Lodge?
No, he kept on, yeah. He goes. Ik wart ik aan dus schön weiter. Die beschikking ben ik niet schrikken. Oh, die is ook
He also returned.
Oh, die is ook schrikken.
They returned after this first sally.
So, but I remember de gedenk van de Duitse armee aangekomen nog Lodge. Die zijn hier naar stabiliste paden zitten roepen in de richting van de fabriek.
The gedenkst is
I remember. I'll never forget.
You saw it, describe it for us.
That might compared to I was a kid. I was 18 years old, almost 19. Yeah, I say they came in the horses. I've never seen horses like that. We used to know like they call them like Belgian horses, big horses pulling all those armor, the army, the howitzer, just that power that they came in. It was just
terrifying.
Terrifying is the word. Terrifying. The way they came in, couldn't believe it. They kept on marching.
Terrorize the population.
Yeah. And then soon after they came in, they started already. We couldn't walk in the streets. They would come out, with trucks around the block and just gather people. And the
Gather Jews.
They gathered up people, and then the Polacks made them wise to the fact that the Jews were circumcised. This way they could distinguish who was a Jew and who was not.
Montek wants to say that he remembers more than he does, because he left in 1939 and spent the war in Russia. So his memories of Poland ended when he...
How did he get from Warsaw to Russia?
Wait,
let it go where there's energy.
How did he get to Russia? He's going to tell us.
Mein Tat hat gehabt Zicker. En ze hebben gehabt Pferd met zo'n
Wegen,
en wat ze vier die zegt Zicker.
The Muslim got
Nee, der Tat ist,
His father had sugar and they had the means of transport.
They had horses
Horses
and big
and
wagons, you know. So
Ja. In 1939, durch den Kummermann, haben uns gewohnt, alle Kirche auf meiner Reihe 40
Finnegedraasie.
In Sebek hat gewohnt, alle Kirche auf meiner 43.
In Miele woont 41.
Ganz entsprechend alle Kirche auf meiner
41.
It's telling their addresses, which I still have.
Next one is
Ja.
Can you translate what just happened?
It's called the First of May Street, Pieszego Maja.
Alle Kirche auf meiner.
The First of
Yeah,
May
they-
Street.
I don't understand what just happened.
He said, we lived at the Alea Pieszego Maja. We lived on
In
First of May
Lodz.
Street. Da was bleibst du? Ist das
Ja, Herz.
Ja.
Sebek hat gewohnt in einem Neuhaus.
That's that Lita says.
Ja.
Next house to ours.
Sebek was married, it's just
Yeah,
not Sebek.
yeah.
He was married,
Right.
of course, to his first wife.
Not Frank.
Sebek, not Frank.
Ja.
He lived
Hier
in
lebt
another house.
in
On the
dem
same
Haus am gewohnt polnische Offizier.
He lived in a house where also Polish officers lived.
Apartment house.
His brother.
Die polnische Offiziere sind da weggelaufen.
They ran.
Mit den polnischen Armee sind sie
And the
weggelaufen.
army.
The Polish officers ran or Savage ran?
Yeah.
Ran away to Warsaw or just ran
Ja.
Of course.
Ja. In
Dispersed.
die polnische Offiziere sind weiter mal rein zu deutschen Offizieren.
And German officers moved into these dwellings that the
The
Polish
apartments.
officers vacated.
Ja,
Stop that.
Sebek hat gehabt, am Wohnentag zwar am zweiten und am dritten Stock. Ich gewinne eine Wohnung von einem polnischen Offizier am dritten Stock weggelaufen. Ich habe gesetzt von Deutschen in einen, die ein paar Tage gewesen.
Brother Sebek had a dwelling on the second floor, and it was the one on top, the third floor, and one below him was
They were Germans.
vacated. And so Germans
Ist er
moved.
nicht gekommen, der ein Offizier für die Deutschen zu Sebek sehr fein. Und hat ihn gemacht, der Vorschlag. Also wie von der Chava, neben ihm. Ich habe eine Wohnung hier, sei er sich die. Öfters die mir geben, dein Wohnung. Und ich habe in die zweite.
He was approached by a German officer, unbelievably,
To what?
to trade departments. So apparently the full meaning of their presence wasn't yet.
Seine Gewinn, also ja, fein.
See, Hefner, very polite and nice.
Von Gerät.
The trade apartments.
Selbstverständlich war er hat den Ball gegeben, wenn sie tun.
Yeah.
What did the German officer
They
approach you
wanted
for?
to trade apartments, because they asked nicely.
Wait, they wanted to trade with your family
Sebek,
or with
with Sebek.
Sebek's family?
That's right.
Sebek's had the nicer apartment.
No,
No, no,
because
no.
they wanted to be
The
together.
building,
Yes,
the building where his brother lived was a new building. And that building, there were Polish officers, but when they ran away, so those two apartments were vacated. So Germans moved in. So one lived above Sebek's apartment and one lived below the apartment. So one of the officers says, you know, since he lives here, why don't we trade? You go down and take this apartment and we'll go up there.
what interests me is, it sounds as if it were just a very ordinary.
They didn't say, get out.
They did, yeah.
And so what happened?
Well, that's what he wouldn't have done up then, was this.
Und der hat einen Kontakt mit diesen Deutschen. Sind die
He
gewesen,
said he
man
had
Friede,
that contact.
wir haben gewählt mit den Deutschen, wir gewählt, sind die ständig gekommen, sind
They were in touch, you
Nicht
know,
lang, aber
with
Yeah,
the,
yeah,
he was,
contract.
his brother was in touch with these two
Sie gewählt auch
German
gewesen.
officers.
Sie haben doch gehabt, wie heißt das, auf Ordonnanzen, die deutsche Offiziere
They had the ordinance.
No, no, do you know what an ordinance is?
They had arms, they had arms.
No, 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 no.
Like the city law?
No, no. They had, you know, a soldier that did all the things for
Orderly.
An orderly.
Oh,
Die
servants.
Ordentlichs haben schon gemacht, was er will, so mit Sachen, so gemacht, die
So Sebek
Yeah.
benefited.
Yeah.
So translate this?
Well, the orderlies did for the
Yeah.
Sebek, some of the things they did
Different
for the
things.
German officers. They cleaned up, they brought nice
Yeah.
things.
So the German orderlies helped.
Yeah, for what I don't know, yes, so.
Ja. Das ist gewinnt.
Das ist gewinnt am Anfang. Wie lange ist das umgegangen?
Das ist auch nicht umgegangen,
Das ist
nee, aber die Offiziere, nee, erzählen.
Longer than a week.
Erzählen.
This lasted for longer than
Maybe a month, maybe a month,
Maybe
some
a
more.
month.
in the first days of the occupation.
Voor zij, die Offiziere haben gesucht, geht zurück. Sie Stein geht frei.
They were friendly officers and they said to his brother, you guys better get out of here. I'm telling you, it's not going to be
Yeah,
good.
they warned them, but they, they were.
The German officers told them to get out.
Er sind Kinder,
These were the good Germans.
offen, aber so ein bisschen.
There were some,
Ja.
They weren't specific, but they
just said it won't be good.
Yeah,
You better go.
better move away from here.
Now, were you still in Lodz at that
We
time?
saw place in Los
Sie haben gewinnt.
Yeah, he
You were
was
still
She
there.
was in touch with
So
us.
Sevek told you
Jetzt,
this?
ja. Maar gewoond in de Schweiz, 2, 3 Häuser. Maar ständig
They lived very close
They
together.
lived like they were.
Mein Vater hat geguckt, sie hat recht gekonnt an die deutsche Firmen. Es waren die deutschen Firmen, alles in der hohen Klasse, wie die Grenze. Industrie bei Deutschen. Sie sind gewinnt, situierte Deutschen. Die beste
The
Geschäfte
ethnic
Deutschen.
Germans
yeah.
were well situated.
Oh yeah, in Lodz, a lot
They
of
were
textile, big textile
They were an
factories
upper
were German
class
owned.
economic.
Ja, ein Gewinn war.
China and Roman.
Ja, das ist mega alles. Jetzt hat man auf meiner Beins in der Heben gerät, auf der Karte, man ausgekehrt, FTS haben wir tun, ja, alle pro Klasse.
They were discussing
Yeah,
now what ought we to do now. And they,
In the
his father,
family.
in the
In the
family,
family.
in his family, his father suggested
Yeah.
they might be better off in a small town. Perhaps they should all go to Biala Podlask.
Which is where the grandparents were.
Where the grandparents now were. The buses were.
Aber beschlossen, als ich so ein
They
kicken
determined that he should go there and look it over.
Ja, ich habe kicken selber, weil da Frau,
He was free.
Yeah.
Sevek was married.
ja, ich habe von,
And the Zane was done, was began machen.
sehen
If
Sie, wie dort
it's feasible.
Did
Yeah.
Sevek have children then?
No, at Mishkan.
No, his older sister had
Ich
to.
bin nicht lang verheiratet, ich bin nicht lang
He was a new bridegroom in this man.
No time.
Yeah.
Ich kann lange Zeit reden.
Yeah.
Und ich bin
He
geflogen.
was geflogen from Biala.
So, gesorgt von ja.
Yeah, gesund. He was going to go to Biala.
Ich bin eigentlich in den Zug, ich bin geflogen bis Warsch.
So he went as far as Warsaw.
Und bei Warsch bin ich auf der Gewohnpartie.
Damit. Ich bin auch gewesen bei ihr, Natascha. When you left it, everyone stayed there.
Also ich gewohnt sehr.
Translate a bit there.
He says he went as far as Warsaw. And in
Himself,
Warsaw,
by himself.
by himself. And he spent the night with our cousin Esther, the first cousin who lived in Warsaw.
Ja, ich bin dahin gekommen zu Esther, Esther bin ganz allein.
She was all by herself. Und wir stücken Kinder.
Wusste ich gewesen, ihr Mann und ihr Manns Brüder und ihr Manns Schwester, die Schwester in Takt gewesen, Schwester gewesen. Ihr Mann, sie haben rausgefunden, Einkäufen Lebensmittel, sie mich überhaupt in der Welt war Einkäufen Lebensmittel, haben es gebringt in die Stunden, haben es gekostet, verdient hat es.
This is the command, not the
No,
moment.
no, no, in the middle, in the middle.
This is
No
the
more
beginning and end.
Das hat sie gewiss
Found his cousin quite alone.
Wochen bis Warsch.
Her husband and all the other men
Bei
were
Warsch
involved
Wochen
went to
bis
see if they could gather up stuff, whether by whose use or sale during the days that were anticipated.
So she was alone, but her husband was still in Warsaw
Yeah.
because they were planning for
We're
the
planning for something.
they were planning for the
Yeah,
trying
so the line was to do that.
to were they planning for the
Ja, bei Nacht haben wir gehört, bin ich gewesen bei dort und ich bin spät bei Nacht, hätten sie gekommen da, Havuk gekommen in seine Schwester gewesen bei ihr, seine Schwester.
Yes, her husband's
Die
sister.
zwei
was
Brüder
there.
gewesen. Ich komme, wo haben sie gesucht, die Esther hat gesucht, die Schwester, warum ich da in Havuk gegangen, sie helfen Havuk, die ganze Sache muss umgebringt dort. Dorf.
Oh, they thought
Yeah.
that there was the people
Yeah.
coming back with the produce.
Du so gewiss sein, also die 10:30.
Yeah, it was about 10.
Nun, wir alle hochgegangen. Das ist erst, ich kenne sogar 2 kleine Kinder. Ganz
Yes,
ganz
because they-
And it's made of a small that time.
Yeah.
Ganz klein. gemäß mir Eltern.
Ja, seven.
Als sie geblieben, wenn ich mit der Schwester gegangen, man konnte sie helfen, aber ich mit der
Unload the wagon.
Unload,
Ich
ja.
habe Fahrt im Häus, hab die Gas. Und als wie wir oben, geht da doch ein Deutsche,
Soldat.
nicht Soldat, ein Deutsche,
Hier.
Herr, ein Deutsche, wie heißt das, also er macht zwei Mann, insgesamt kontrolliert die Gegend. Doch ein Deutsche macht zwei deutsche Soldaten, die sie kontrollieren. Und sie sehen ins Russland und sie schon noch 10, jetzt noch die Statuten war ich
Aus,
auch Dings in Manhattans. Und dort sind die Schrocken und gedenkt, dass er noch die Wehre ist, und reingestellt und so, immer das alle aufgeführt, in der Deutschen.
one more.
Dort schon nicht gekannt, darauf geht sie Esther, sie schon die Schwester, seine Brüder.
They went down, but they thought we'd help unload the wagons that they heard come with what they presumed was produce.
At 10:30.
And she had
He and
30.
Esther went down.
No,
No.
Esther stayed with her little children. She had tiny children, two of them.
But
The other young people.
He
she had
and
not-
Esther's sister-in-law.
When they got
Sister-in-law,
down,
the chicken.
just as they were about, the wagon was indeed the one they were looking for, and they were about to unload it, they were immediately stopped by two
Two German, a patrol, a
Two
German
patrols, a
patrol.
German patrol of two guys, strong-armed, a lot of,
Yeah,
and told them
and hold them away
to cease and desist, and they hauled them off. They,
to jail.
wie gesagt,
Aber das Gelingen, was jetzt geführt, schon wieder nach, was jetzt geführt, noch gehört, ich kenne den Mann, ist er doch gegangen, und dann hat er sehr kasern, was jetzt geführt hat, wie es
they took them to jail.
Ja, was geführt alle nach. Wenn wir vier Mann, jeder gewinnt eine extra,
They separated them.
nicht jeder gewinnt separat, nicht alle
Just all,
separat.
they separated.
They separated two of them.
The four of them.
The four of them, they
There
separated.
were-
now who were the four? There.
The four was the cousin's husband, his brother, and the sister that he went down to help unload an inn. Those are the four.
The one that
There were two
wasn't
brothers and a
picked up.
sister and Motu.
One that wasn't picked up was Esther with the two children.
Esther, she was left alone up there.
Till
She
later.
didn't know what was going on. They never came back.
Interessant gemeint.
Yes,
Ich muss jetzt alles, ich hab, keiner hat nicht, wer mit wem hat du retten wurde, ich hab weitergeführt. Es hat auch im ersten Tag, ist er reingekommen, was jetzt so passiert ist. Sie gewinnt, ich habe
the second day, they shaved their
Aber
heads.
es ist mit schön gesitzen, mit schön gesitzen.
Mit that nicht gesagt, was wird sagen, gesagt, was mit that, oh, because they violated the
Gar
law.
nicht gesagt.
Gar nicht gesagt. What president?
Jeden, ob der sich Kopf schön beendet.
Already shaved their head.
Das war mir jetzt
They were all and they were all in separate
Separate
cells.
cells.
Yeah.
Und manche kriegen die Beine gebräut, kann ich nicht essen, weil der Mann gar nicht. Also ich bin gesessen, also ich bin gewählt, 10 oder 11.
10 or 11 days, they sat
10 or
there all
11.
day.
Were you frightened?
Mother God, that's it. Was Mother
So,
God.
Ja, einmal auf was geschlagen.
They also
They beat
called
him.
once.
Mit der Stadt,
With this, with
Das
this
erste
thing.
von mir ist mir Katastrophe, das erste von meinem Leben hier habe ich Gefängnis, ich habe gewiss, was ist.
For a time in his life, he knew it was to be
Jail.
confined. And it's,
Was ist Gefängnis?
with a beating there.
Noch, du sagst, ja, es kennt noch der Mann, einmal sitzen wir sind allein.
Yeah.
Ja,
Alone.
ja, wir sind allein, kräft uns der Zeit, sein Mond.
Thinking what's gonna be, what's gonna be, you know?
Geht auf den Tier, ins Kind da rein, der Deutsche Offizier.
Door then opens and comes a German officer.
Ja, Winograd, Montag, ja, Sie sind frei. Du gehst, bist
You
du
are
frei.
free, you can go
You're free, you
home.
can go.
Ja, hat er noch einmal gesagt. Heute ist Freitag. Heute ist Freitag. Und Freitag ist Schabbos. Und du bist frei. Also,
Shabbos.
This is Friday and it's before
Tomorrow
Shabbos,
Shabbos.
you go home.
He said tomorrow is Shabbos.
ja, und du sitzt da und du bist gewählt auf 4, das bist gewählt durch 10, also ich auf das, bist du gewählt auf Tag. Alles bist frei.
That's it, that was your charge, you were
What were you charged with?
with breaking the curfew
The
after
curfew.
10, a minor things,
Yeah.
after 11 days and a beating. He sent home. Okay.
And the German said,
Oh, but that
"Tomorrow-
company-
today's Friday,
that
tomorrow is
company-
Shabbos," he said.
Der Kopf
He's
gewesen.
telling me, oh, you're a Jew, this is, yeah.
Der Kopf ist aber gewesen.
But his head was shaved.
Schreck.
Terrible.
Vorher gedacht, dass ich da wusste. Ich war da wusste ich hier dort, ich bin gestanden, die zwei Brüder.
Also, they ordered up your They let the others
Später,
also
was
go.
hat er gesagt? Was hat er gewusst? Ich habe ich habe nicht gewusst. Sie zwei Brüder gewesen. Das Mädel nicht gewesen. Was hat er gewusst? Also immer in seiner Stil. In die Schwester gewesen. Sie gesetzt die Leute mit Kies und gewähnt die ganze Zeit. Die hat geschrieben, sondern kein Kind. That's how it's been. Immer hat sie auch was gemacht.
They let the woman out. She was sitting and moaning and wailing that she had a young child and all. They let her out after the second or the third day. The two men were let out with
Sie auch ist sie gewesen, was sie gemacht hat, und auch mit dem, sie sind gelaufen, schon sie Polizei, sie gelaufen mit dem, und sie hat es bewegt, am uns frei.
She was still manipulating to let them go, he thinks. But you can see those were different days than when the Nazis really took final. That's very interesting. They were still able to manipulate.
Wenn man eingeführt, die ist in
Der Paschis.
nicht auf ja, in Deutsch,
Und no, the bands, the
Lodge.
ja,
Ja.
das ist schon gewesen.
Naja, ich kann
He's asking when the bands were put on. He needed
I
to
don't
know
remember.
something.
Schon, wenn er so immer Whisky kommt. Ich habe die 11 Tug nicht gegessen, ich kenne den Mann, aber ich habe die 11 oder 10 Stück in der Bäume. Die zwei Brüder sind mit uns gehinget. Sonst würde ich was mitnehmen. Aber sie noch nicht das gegessen, das kann ich nicht
He
machen.
didn't eat anything.
Ich bin krank auf dem Mund. Ich habe
He had
gemeint, dass ich
ulcers.
das ist Freude am Start.
So he saved those 10 pieces of bread and the two
Yeah.
brothers devoured it. They were so starved.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ich habe gemeint, dass ich am besten das Freude gestorben bin.
He had an ulcer, he was afraid to eat that bad. They didn't eat it.
So he didn't eat anything.
Ja.
So he starved his ulcer through healing.
Das ist schwarz Freude, und ich habe
It was
called that black
dark, black bad.
Es gibt fünf Wasser, das ist doch der Pein, bis dahin gegangen. Wasser, das ist das old Kenton Piano from Boston. Remember, this is en route to see my grandmother. Sounds like little
Okay,
So,
let's
so,
continue.
then, so then what happened when you got out?
So let's continue.
Yeah.
Then
They said, please stay a few days so you can recover from your experience.
You went back to stay with Esther?
Yes, yes.
With
With the two brothers who were there. It was terrible. It was a young boy, I had no idea.
Ashanda.
Naja, jedenfalls in 2, 3, ich habe ein bisschen holen, Fächen nicht vor ja, Fächen zu rein,
He's thinking of the whole now, won't go to Biala, just the whole
Fächen
thing.
zu holen, wir mit vor Biala, diese Kreuzung verlangt.
Yeah. How do I look
Yeah.
going to Biala?
Ja. Sie ist da doch gegangen, ich habe ja tut, wie ich habe gesagt, das tun, ist er doch gekommen zu mir,
After a few days, an old friend from
Man,
London came
dat
to see him.
En de hemel heen bezoekt, er daar weg de Schule, ganz liebe Karriere. Op de heen bezoekt, als ik ben heftig, ja, dat denk je, oder Warsche, als kent het gewisse Warsche bij dienst, hier
So he was on the way to, everybody told everybody where they said they could find him.
This friend.
There
There was a
Friend
friend
from school.
at school, friend of his, was going to Warsaw, and he was asking about him. He went to his parents, asked where he's, so he says he was going to Biala,
They did ask
but
us.
if you want to find out exactly where he is, this is the address to this Esther's address, and they'll tell you
So
where
she
he
was
is.
the local.
So he came up, and he was still up there.
Yeah.
En
Yeah, no,
daar
it was,
oh, heb ik gezien. De heer Beesman had geherd van de Beesman niet. Nou, zurück aus der Schule, ich musste wohl in der Watch schon diese.
Yeah.
He came to tell him the message. They haven't heard from you, they're concerned, but do not come back to Lodge, they're already wearing the yellow bands.
We had a band like blue, white, and bands, you know, we had to wear with a sign, the Jude, you know, Jew.
So they told him, they sent a message to him, we have nothing to come
Das
back.
kann eigentlich nicht mehr.
Du sagst, du willst sein in Oktober oder
Kann sein.
Oktober. Das wird
39.
Das ist
Ja,
alles
ja,
bei
alles.
uns.
39. October
39.
39.
Die hast du nicht was zu
Yeah, well, nothing to go back for.
In deine Tate, deine Mama made that this.
Russland.
Wie du das machst gewesen.
Ja.
Aber wo es war, ich habe noch ein, die Mama sagt, es gewinnt die Schädels.
Benjamin Fege, his
Yeah.
mother's family,
Nee, von
all from Breslin,
Brest-Litovsk.
the Rosenfelds were from,
Yeah, in
his
the mother's
mother's
side.
family, Rosenfeld, was from
In-
Breslin-Litovsk.
In dem und ich gewinnt, eingeteilt hat, du die Herzen Russland.
According to the division, Breslin-Litovsk
In dem und sind alle,
On the Russian side.
was already Russian.
They,
He had a family.
This is the Stalin-Hitler pact. The Stalin-Hitler pact.
And he and his friend and many others ran to places like Breslin-Litovsk because they wanted to be on the Russian side. They felt more comfortable.
see, when the Germans
That's why
came
they
in,
ran.
there's a river by the name of Bug. And on the other side of Bug was Brest-Litovsk, that was Russian territory. And on this
That was
side
all
of the
Bug
river,
River.
that was the borderline. On the other side was already Russia,
was Russia.
and that's where he went because he had family
And
there.
Azoris to go up this.
And Biala was on this side.
We
Biala,
had trouble crossing the river, going through checkpoints.
I don't know what that mine is.
He never went home again.
Wat is gecheckt daar
He
op
ran on
Oh,
and
Was it dat saai?
that's how he
Dat
did.
saai.
That's the story of how he went.
Wat ik denk. Wat ik denk.
It's much more dramatic than I thought.
That is smuggled, you know, smuggled to the river.
It happened that way.
Harold asked, did you have trouble getting across the river?
It's a schaatswerkheid naar het schijnt.
Nu ja, ze weet.
There were
Hartjes, schleppers, want dat zijn die vier.
there was
There are people
there were
there.
guides for money. They
Er was
would
nog eens gehabt, er was niet
And he had money with him.
This got geld, that's it.
We got dat is geld.
Dat is,
Wat is dat? Nee, niet
And was this gemein auf dein
Dus ook met
blink? That's all he had.
all he had to do was wearing.
And did he ever hear anything from his family again?
Not until he came back.
Das ist das Letzte, was das gehört von der Familie. Mehr nicht. It was the
Not,
He had as a scout to Biala, but he never came back.
En nu ben ik nog Brest-Litovsk.
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 Meer mag ik gaan
And
dan
then,
niet meer
did you
van de
stay
inderdaad.
with the family in Brest?
Aan Nieberg.
Yeah, die
yeah,
gaan met z'n
and
drieën.
you stayed with Anne.
Stayed with an aunt.
For how long?
Yeah, for how long?
Three line was geweest bij me.
Ja, dus ik kunnen zijn of ja, half
A half year. Dat was geweest ruhig.
Wat ik met de Russen?
Ja, aber ruhig. Ze nog niet, de armee is niet geweest.
Russian,
It was always geweest ruhig. It was quiet, all quiet on the front.
This is before the
The Russian army was there.
Germans and Russians started to fight.
Maar dat ik niet mooi
En 6 Monaten ben je gevallen, ben je gegaan.
Op 6 Monaten om de Russen gezocht. Die Russen, ik met de Russische weg. Wer, die alle mensen die op dat gewoond zijn, geleefd zijn, geweest automatisch Russisch. Zijn die gewoon
All the
automatisch
people who lived
Russische
there were
weg.
automatically
Before the war.
Russian. Before the war, were automatically Russian citizens.
Zijn automatisch geworden.
Automatic.
Eens zijn we nog niet geweten.
They were not, of course,
Yeah,
like
yes.
that.
Yeah.
They were not indigenous people.
Om de Russen gezocht te zijn. Ze maken een registratie. Wer wil terugvlogen nach Deutschland und wer nicht, muss man nach russischer Bürger.
If you don't want to go back to Germany,
The Russians
the Russians said, then you have to sign in and want to become a Russian citizen.
either go back to Germany where you came from, or if you want to stay here.
Wenn sie so in Deutschland meinten, sie gemeint Polen.
Poland.
Go back to German territory. Sign on for German Russian citizens.
Er wil terug naar
Was
Deutschland.
gezegd,
And then you have to go in the Russian army.
Russischer Bürger, und Garten mit der Mama dann. Ja, Russen haben wir. Und zurück nach der Armee.
Months afterwards, he'd like to go home again. He
No,
said,
no, 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 no,
He said,
no.
I'm not signing up.
No, I'm not signing up.
I'm not signing up, I want to
I
do
want to take care of my parents. I
Yeah,
want to see what's happening.
he thought that once he signed up as a Russian, he won't be able to go back to his parents. He says, I don't want to sign up, I want to go back to lodge, to my parents.
Dus gemeente kent ze dat niet helpen.
Selbstverständlich.
Aber doch.
Das heißt, das betrifft. Du bist ein völlig schöner russischer Bürger, aber ich bin
Dan, ze hebben ook niet gelast dat hij zo zurückgeht to watch.
Ich weiß nicht, aber so ein bisschen russischer Bürger.
Und damit die alle so interviewen.
Die alle so haben gesucht, sie will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Ich habe gesucht in Zürich, in Familie dort. Wir will nicht werden kein russischer Bürger. Aber die uns alle arrestiert und uns weggeschickt.
Das sind wir.
Das ist er nicht gewusst. He didn't know what the outcome would be. When those who signed saying we do not wish to be Russian citizens, they rounded them up and they shipped them to Siberia. That's how he got to Siberia. That's the Russians sent him to Siberia.
Yeah, I mean, it turns out Siberia was probably the best place to be by later in that
The
years.
way the war was, he didn't anticipate that he would be removed totally from circulation. I guess he thought he'd get rid of this. Yeah, if you don't want to be a citizen, you're our enemy. You're our enemy, it's our son. So they round you up.
And sent you like by train to Siberia?
By train, yeah. With the bomb, with the bomb. A bomb.
A camel train, huh?
Ja, camel
car, camel car.
Ja. Volgende Staatenvoer, maar
6 Wochen.
And
6 weeks by
6 weeks,
by
I had a
train.
nice trip to Siberia.
Nice trip.
It was called the Orient Express.
Orient Express.
No, they just.
And did you have food? Did you have
Ze gegeven Essen, fragt sie. Was haben die gegeben Essen? Breit.
Ja, Leute, dat ben ik in de vriend. Dus ik weet in de Twisse, dat met in lager, dat is arbeid.
Of the bomb.
Auf dem Baum ist es gewesen.
Dat moet gegeben, ja.
Ja,
Hier als ik Leute mit Wasser, aber es haben gewählt, aber doch ausgestellt. Mit Getränke blieb uns jetzt gegeben.
Dus men eenmaal gesagt, dat zijn de uitgeheeld die ulcers.
Dat ben ik gezien geworden.
He said there he recovered from his ulcers from starvation. He didn't aggravate his ulcers.
See, that's how he got to Russia.
And
See,
that's how he
and
got
when I ran away, when I came back after that shooting in there, I came back to Lodge, and I waited until the Germans came in, and this was the beginning of September, right? And it got progressively worse.
Nog geen gedanke, dat is de man. Is nog geen gedanke, de Priest, op de grond van nog niet
Lithuania.
op de hele dat bezit in mijn arbeitsbund. In zijn gedachte dort, we kennen het Amerika, hoe maakt contract, met ons
They thought perhaps they go to Lithuania.
Maar dat is niet gelungen.
Wait, from Siberia to Lithuania?
No. From Brest.
Before he went on with the Russians, signed against the Russians, he thought he might get to Lithuania, make decent contacts there, perhaps with Americans, families.
He didn't know that the Russians took over Lithuania. He thought that Lithuania is a separate country. He'll be able to make contact with the outside world. You know.
The Nazis took their part and the Russians took their part.
Aan de Duitsland besetzt Polen is het algemeen de orde met alles.
As soon as the Germans went to Poland, it was orderly.
Waldgewinn aus Stamm, Hausgewinn. An der Russland besetzt dort ist Polen. Das andere Ding ist ein Atomwaffen. Aus dem Winter bist du das Soldaten, das Soldat ausgewählt.
Sloppy. The Russians were sloppy with their discipline.
Von Anfang an,
Yeah.
bis man erst gemerkt hat, dass sie Kinder Russland jetzt verschickt haben. Instantly eingefahren war, so ich nicht.
He didn't dream this would be the outcome of this
Maar
conflict.
zeer logisch in deze zin.
What is
Zeer
it?
bezoek dat die wil zurück, dus dat zo
He says their logic was logical. If you want to go back, you're our
Zeer
enemy.
logisch in geweest.
And we will send you to a work camp. Some kind of outlet's in Siberia.
Okay.
And thanks to this, you know, he's alive.
Right.
Right.
Sure.
Because even in the Russian army,
He's
there was
alive without ulcers.
Right.
That's
So what's your...
Now you're going to tell your story.
Yeah. So when the Germans came in,
He has to go, he's going to smoke a cigarette to bring back more.
More memories.
So
Yeah, I know what that's like.
it became
I
progressively.
don't know how to remember.
You know what is all?
Now Jack doesn't
Now
need a
Jack's
cigarette.
okay.
So when the Germans came in, and it got to be very bad. We had to stay all night in front of a bakery to get a piece of bread. I'll never forget, we stood all night, even my mother, may she rest in peace, we stood the whole family in a bakery for bread. And it was near our apartment house, maybe a block away. And in the morning, the 2 German policemen came to keep order before they opened the doors. And the Polacks would go out of the line and would point to tell the Germans that you there, point to the Jews. And the Germans would go over, house, and after standing all night long, we wouldn't get any bread. The Polacks told the Germans, who's a Jew?
What was Ralph's name?
Out.
Out.
It got worse and worse. The Germans would come to the neighborhood, and catch all the people in the street, and most of them, of course, were Jews. The non-Jews, they would let go. The Jews, they would take forced labor to their quarters there, to clean toilets, to do the worst kind of work.
In-laws.
In-laws, yeah. This was in 1939.
This is before they liquidated together.
No, this was in 1939.
Yeah, I see, it was early, it was early on. Yeah.
Before they started again. This was like in October, in November, and we decided, my brother and I, we decided that it's no good. It's no good. We had to hide out. They beat us. See, I don't know.
Kennst du toch wel wissen, die zijn nieuws gezien in het lager? En ze hebben gedegen wissen, maar dat was not the lager.
Yeah, that's it.
Well, see, let me have to tell it yet. So we decided that, and mother too. I had 3 sisters at home, and mother and nephew, and my brother-in-law was already sent away someplace to work by the Germans. I don't know where he went. So we decided that we'll run away also to Russia.
All of it.
And yeah, so first we said we'll go to Biala. And my sister Henya went with us, with me and my brother, and my older sister went with us. And we said that we'll go to Warsaw, we'll stay in Warsaw. And Henya, because we heard that there were beatings on the border to Russia, so she would go from Warsaw, she would go alone. As a woman, she would go alone to investigate how the crossing is, if it's possible to go.
It should be said that Biala was en route to Russia.
Well, Biala was very,
Eastern Poland,
very,
it's very close.
very short from
Very
that
short distance
river,
from
not far
Brest-Litovsk.
from the
In the
Russian
Bug
border.
River.
Wasn't that
Biala's-
unusual to send a woman alone to do that?
No, at that time, no. She was a young woman in her 20s, so she was supposed to go investigate. So when we left Lodz by train, before we came to Warsaw, a German officer went up to the train, and he picked on me and grabbed a hold of me and threw me down the train. Threw me off the train, and here the train moves on, and my sister and my brother, they go, and I'm behind. So I had to wait a day, stay there. I don't remember where I slept. I think on the station there. And the next day, the next possible train, I hopped the train and I went to Warsaw, and we met over at Estes. But so when I came to Estes, so my sister went on right away. She went on by train towards Biala. My sister went on towards Biala, and Esther didn't have enough room. Esther lived in one room, and in that room was her brother, his brother, her husband's brother, and the sister, and the 2 children. There was not enough room for me and my brother too. So we had a cousin living there from my father's side, who lived not far from Esther. Right across there was a prison, a very famous prison in Polish history in Warsaw, Pawiak. And she lived across the street from that prison, And we decided, and we talked with her, and she said it's all right, we can come and stay with her. And there was also a sister of hers from Lodz who came to live with her. And I'll never, you asked her about the comical thing. One evening, when we moved from Esther to this cousin, my brother was walking in front of me, and I was carrying a big thing. I had inside a couple pillowcases and a couple dawn covers, you know, and I was sort of bulky thing, and I was walking in the street with it. All of a sudden, 2 German officers. Halt, stehen bleiben. So one German says to me, was hast du hier? And my brother was standing aside. He sort of disowned me at that time. Was hast du hier? I didn't know German, so I said to him in Yiddish, I say, a kitchen and a tzudek, and a tzidek. Yeah, a pillow and a you know, comforter. Comforter, yeah. So he starts squeezing me and says, hast du das geklaut? Meaning in German, did you steal it? And I didn't know what that word meant. I thought when he pushed it, I thought whether I squeezed it in like that. I said, yeah, So he says to me, hast du das like this? Hast du das geklaut? I said, no, that's mine. You know, no, that's mine. He made a gesture when I stole. No, that's mine. Let us go. So we stayed with our cousin. We had some money, and we left Lodz on December the 3rd. December the 3rd, we left Lodz.
1939.
And then after a couple days, my sister came back from her trip to Biala.
She got to Biala.
And she told us that you can't cross the border now because the Germans, they're beating, that we can't cross.
They're standing.
So she went back to Lodz by train, and my brother and I, we stayed with that cousin there. We had some money. Everything was expensive. And I don't remember how long it took, and the money disappeared. So we had somebody, I think it was our neighbors from Lodz, had some relative who had a son who looked like a German. This boy, he must have been about 18 years old. Blonde, tall, blonde, blue-eyed, didn't look like a Jew. And this boy was traveling to Germany. Nobody bothered him. And he would buy stuff from Germany like playing cards, razor blades, cigarette lighters, stuff like this. He would buy it for next to nothing in Germany. And in Warsaw, we would take it from him. I think he had other customers too. And we would sell it. We would stand in the street of Nalewkis in Warsaw. It was a Jewish street. And we'd sell it and we'd make a living.
So there was still trade going on.
Yeah.
A lot of information.
Yeah, this was already the beginning of 1940. The beginning of 1940.
So it didn't close in completely.
I'll never forget one time, and dinners we used to eat. There was a house in one of the buildings of this on this Nalewki Street. There was a private couple. They cooked dinners. It was on the 2nd floor. And we used to go every day up there for dinner. I don't remember how much it wasn't expensive, but dinner had like some soup and maybe a little piece of meat, a lot of bread, of course, to stuff ourselves up. I'll never forget one day we sitting there, my brother and I, we sitting and eating dinner. All of a sudden, it's quiet. We take a look. There's a German officer and about 3 soldiers with him. Come in, and he says, it was a long room, and the tables were set alongside the window, a long narrow room. Alongside the window were some tables with chairs, and in the middle of the room there were some tables and chairs, and against the inside wall tables, and that's where we're sitting eating. He comes in, looks around, he says, alle Juden diese Seite, all Jews on this side. So we go over the one side, away from the window, and he says like this. Ich warte 5 Minuten und das ganze ausländische Valuta soll da hier auf dem Tisch sein. Wenn nicht, they had guns, those Luger guns, and pointing like this with this gun. Wenn nicht, 5 Leute werden erschossen.
I'm waiting 5 minutes. Go ahead.
I'll wait, and the number so Umfang 40, of 9:70. He says that I'm waiting 5 minutes. All foreign money should be here on the table. If not, I'll take out 5 people and they'll be shot. And he walks out. And they walk out. And right away, you see people had, all the people that were eating there, they were businessmen who were making business in the streets, All they had, so you could, if I had my head on my shoulder, I would have gotten 1 million Polish zlotys. They were taking the money, Polish money, and stuffing it under the tables, under mirrors, They were afraid, but nobody put out any dollars. About 3 minutes later, they come back, and this says, ich wiederhole, I repeat. 2 more minutes and 5 people will be shot if all the foreign money won't be on the table. And again, nobody put out.
Foreign meaning German money or?
Foreign, meaning like dollars and pounds.
Like
Ausländische Valuta. Yeah. Not German or Polish money. Ausländische.
Yeah.
2 minutes later, they come in, he looks and points to one man. Sie, kommen mal her. Points to one man, come here. They went in a different room, and after a little thing, we hear a shot. He comes out, and nobody put out any money, and again, Sie. And took about 3 people like this in there. Then he comes out, and he starts calling. Das meint of Polish, of Deutsch, Meister. Meister, zum Balabu ist er Meister.
Sir.
Ja. Wo ist der Schlüssel? Where's the key? He wanted the key to the door. And he couldn't find the key, and he walked out, and we are all standing maybe 5 minutes. And then the owner goes to the door, look out, and they're gone. And they're gone. So right away we started running down the steps.
Were these men indeed shot? Were they at?
Later we found out they didn't shoot them.
They fired.
They fired, They didn't. It was a private initiative. An officer.
Yeah, it was not.
They
There
wanted
must
to
have been
tell
a
you.
lot
Okay.
of private
So,
initiatives.
but we stayed away already from the place. We didn't go back there. Als we een avondje alleen met 5 zenders op school met een game. I'll never forget. So our money, so we stayed there till it was about March. In March we saw the newspaper from Lodz, a German paper from Lodz, that they're going to close the ghetto. So I said to my brother, look, they're going to close the ghetto, we're going to be here, I want to go back. No, my mother, my sisters, they were without a man. I said, what will we here? My brother didn't want to go back, but I said, I'm going back. I'm going back.
You were in Varsha, but you wanted to return.
We couldn't go to Russia, and so I decided to go back, and of course he went back. And
What did it mean to close the ghetto?
They're going to seal off.
they're going to
the roads.
put the Jews in the ghetto and close it with,
They created the ghetto.
They created the
They
ghetto.
created the ghetto.
What was the ghetto? The ghetto, zo'n in März, So like in March, and they decided they're going to close the ghetto. So we had to smuggle, because they declared already the German Reich, that part of Germany. So we had already to smuggle, illegally, so to speak, to get into the ghetto. So, no. This wasn't the ghetto yet. We came in to Lodz. We had to, the Germans would catch us. And we also lived on the same street.
Sie haben gemisst von noch Warsche, ungefähr. Wenn ich von der Weg komme, soll gemischt schon sein, September, Mitte Oktober, Ende Oktober.
En hier ben ik in 3. Dezember.
Ende Oktober. In der Warsche bin ich geblieben ungefähr,
11 days in jail.
in November. Bis November.
I'm on that.
Nee,
Nicht einmal, nicht ganz.
in November bin ich auch weg.
Ja, in
Nicht
Ierland,
noch Russland, nicht noch Russland.
Noch,
Noch
Ja,
Westwärts.
in Ierland gewesen von 3. December, bin ich gewesen bis März. From 3rd of December till March, we were still in Warsaw. And then when we came back to Lodge,
Aber ich kann schreiben, kein Brief damit. Aber ich bin mit dem Jahr verlassen. In der Tat, ich kann kein Brief mit seinen Fans, mit seinen Fußballern,
But his father had a notion that
Gallop
Gallop Luster worked out. He could load up the wagons and horses from his business. Separate things.
Logicspan.
die weiß, en daar ausgevoerd, aan daar had er ons voorspeld
You
bij
know, I
de
think they're
stier,
gonna have to turn
bij
this
de film.
because
Wordt Duitsland besiegt, wordt Duitsland besiegt, zo wordt het
Well, get through Jack's.
als spannend, twee maanden, dat is wat spannend met die
You
feesten.
another time?
Well, what he wants to tell is what the camp was like in the Soviet.
So maybe we should plan another time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we'll see it.
Let Jack finish a little and then we'll do more tomorrow.
Yeah.
All right.
So we came back to Lodge, and we still lived on the same street. As a matter of fact, they lived number 35. Then when, you know, this was an outside street, so then was 39, 37, 39, we lived 41. And his brother lived 43. So we lived on the same street with 3 houses separating us. So we came back to our home, and we had to already, after a few days, we had to start moving to the ghetto. There was still snow on the ground, I remember.
What is to move?
So we built some kind of like a little sled, and we put it on the stuff on the sled, and we would pull it towards the ghetto. They took what was the ghetto? They took the slum area of Lodge, like in Denver, 5 Points. Yeah, they took the slum area of Lodge. And all the Polacks, all the non-Jews who lived there, had to leave, and the Jews from outside had to. So they went into our apartment, and we had to go. So my mother had a cousin, Cepelinska, Liebe. No, an M. Cepelinski. Zijn Schwester. Dat gaat 2 Schwestern mit der Brüder Lodge. Goldie had 2 uncles. And an aunt. And no, 2 aunts and an uncle. Her father's brother and 2 sisters in Lodge. So one of the sisters lived in that part of town where the ghetto was supposed to be. She was alone with her husband, and she had on the 5th floor, she had 2 rooms. So she offered us 1 room.
So you were able to move into
So we
someone
moved
new.
into one room, 8 people. We moved in a narrow room, narrower than this. It was about from this wall to the door, and about this length. 8 people. And it was the end of the building. It's a 5-story. Winter time, the snow was built up on the wall, the outside wall. There was no heat, so the snow, the wall was covered. So we had to move like this. We moved to the ghetto this way, and this is how we got into the ghetto. And then in May.
Did you have food?
Well, in the beginning, before right away, when they locked the ghetto, so they created like a small Jewish country.
Rules were
We couldn't
different.
use. They created Jewish money. As a matter of fact, I have at home. I have
Still
a
have
bank.
some.
I have some, Jewish money, the Jewish post office, Jewish fire department, Jewish police, everything Jewish. We had no contact with the outside of the ghetto. Warsaw was different. See, Warsaw was different. Warsaw still had, through the underground sewer lines, they had contact with the outside world.
Lodge was cut off.
We were cut off from the world. We didn't know what was going on. And before, wait a minute, when the Germans came in, this was before we still ran away, must have been sometimes in October. Everybody who had a radio had to turn it in.
So there'd be no contact.
If not, if they said if they'll find somebody after that day with a radio, he'll be shot. And they shot plenty of Jews who didn't give back the radio. Die is nog geweest met de Duitse guys? No. in Deutschland kannst du geben Radios, die bist du nicht gewesen.
He was gone over.
Yeah, he was gone already.
Can we make
And
another
we had-
day?
I remember we had a radio, a big, you know, the old fashioned radio.
Der Architekt, aber gewinnt also in Kinderwesen. Die Mäule
Just
gewinnt also in Stadthaus.
Yes.
I'll turn this off. You
Ich
can.
bin gegangen auf die Gasse und noch gekippt, wie man so frisch.
But we would like to vanish when you saw him walking.
He said he couldn't imagine the fear again, because fear didn't get there.
He said that you could not imagine the fear at that time, just seeing, you know,
The sight of a German
the
soldier,
sight of
we were
German
great.
soldiers.
Das ist
It
gesehen.
was terrifying.
So wie ein
Its size, its
He was
authority,
armed.
everything else, his armaments.
Yeah.
He hoped they wouldn't.
When they were
notice.
walking the street, we had to get off the sidewalk.
There are things we don't think about that are so painful.
You know,
such as
you
how children.
can't explain
It is so dreadful.
our feelings. You can't explain. You know, like I was
It's an
telling,
alley- it's an
yeah, like,
alley.
like in a concentration camp later on. Like we
Happened
in the
in
ghetto, we
this-
were joking. We joked that God converted. He became a German. He abandoned us. He
That's
became a
some
German.
conversion, yeah.
And who can explain, you know, the hopelessness, getting up in the morning, putting back on the lice-infested jacket, you know. They gave us in Auschwitz before they sent us to the work camp. They gave us underwear made out of paper, and the paper was crinkled paper, such crinkled where the lice could, you know, sit in those. So what we used. When we used to go to the toilet, of course there was no toilet, we used to cut off a piece of
Use
paper.
underwear.
Underwear we use as toilet paper until we use it all up, you know. Dirty, you know, that's what we... And then we used to put, we had a pair of pants with the striped pants and jacket, and this was lice infested. And then the epidemic of typhus broke out, you know. Who can explain? We had to get up in the morning, it was still raining or snowing, get up and wear those wet things. The lice were eating us alive, and so we were, you know, praying. If there's a God, we shouldn't get up in the morning. That's enough.
Yeah,
Because there's no
that's-
hope. There was no hope. You know, everything was so hopeless. It worked and worked and worked. And if you didn't produce so much, you know, they didn't give you that water, you know, with some cabbage floating around. This was our lunch, you know. So that's what they gave us. And then at one time we didn't have anything. Later, one time we got bread. You know, those were those square loaves that the Germans were, you know, the German army was eating. And that bread was all green, all moldy. And that bread we got. I look at this, how am I going to
I
eat
must
it?
leave
So I took a little bit,
Sorry.
so I took a little bit of water. So I thought I'll throw the bread in the water, all that mold will come to the top, I'll swim it off, and the rest of it, boy, it looked like garbage, like sewer thing. I had to throw it away because that would eat it. So next day when we got another piece of bread, so we ate it with a thing. The dust was coming out. We were eating the dust of the mold was coming out. We ate it. And then this one, we didn't have this. So the Germans, for themselves, you know, because there were German workers that led our thing. I had a German who helped me in there. A German from Munich, from his town, that I found after the war. He helped me. So for the Germans, they brought in some potatoes for the German kitchens, and they put them in the ground for the winter, so they won't freeze. But they picked a bad terrain, was a damp terrain, wet, and all the potatoes, they got rotten there. So the way in the morning, wintertime was so dark when we went, we knew where it was. So you would run and dig little by little a hole, and finally you would get into those potatoes. You put in like an oven, they were fermenting. We would take out, and I remember, I'll never forget talking about humor. One of the guys filled up a cement bag, you know, an empty cement bag, filled it up with those rotten potatoes. And when we got to the place before we got to work, before the Germans arrived, so he hid it in a place not far from a German engineer had his table with the plans on it. And later, I'll never forget it, this German was walking around back and forth. What stinkt da? What stinks here? Because it was rotten, it was stinking like hell. And he didn't know what stinks in that place where he was standing.
And then later, when we were about to go home, this German from far noticed that this guy was pulling out that sack. He started running after me. If he had a gun, see those Germans, they didn't carry guns, these were like CB, you know, construction battalions. If he had a gun, he would have shot him. Oh, and he dropped it and he ran away. So we used to get those potatoes. There was winter time, and our barracks in the camp were in the ground. Just the gable, the roof, was sticking out, and that thing was covered with green, with grass. So from the airplanes, they wouldn't see that that's a camp. So there was under the gables, we slept right under the gables on straw, full of course, lice infested. We had a blanket, carousel, a thin blanket. And there was a walkway right directly under the ridge, you know. So winter time, they let us take in a little stove. So we would take those potatoes, they were so rotten that when you pulled it in the skin, it would just peel off. And then we would squash it and lay it on top of that stove. Right away, it would become, all that starch would become white, and it was stinking like hell. At that time, we didn't get any pets. I remember one Sunday we had...
You would then eat the potatoes?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. Well, and how would it be? And see, we went to camp together with Lithuanian Jews. We were 150 Jews from Lodz and 500 Lithuanian Jews. When we came to that working camp, they were there already, and they took the best working spots they took. And we had the worst ones, you know, real hard labor. And then they came, I don't remember from where, but they came like this. They were so strong. What they could do, two of them, we had to have from the ghetto, we came from the ghetto lodge, the skeletons. We had to have 10 guys to pick up what two of them could pick up. So they didn't believe that we couldn't do it. They said that we are, you know, pretending that we don't want to work. And the Germans, because of them, the Germans started beating us. And I remember they were throwing out of the kitchen potato peels, this big. In the ghetto, I'll never forget, my mother received a prescription from the doctor for 1 kilogram of potato peels. I remember I went to the kitchen with this prescription, and they gave me 1 kilogram potato peels. And I'll never forget, I woke up in the middle of the night, a little lamp was burning in our apartment in the ghetto, in that one room, and Mother was sitting there and peeling those peelings. She was cleaning those peelings up. So I said to Mother, I said, Mom, why are you sitting there going to sleep? Guys, Mom should be cleaning of a recept from a doctor, in the ghetto. So when we saw that they were throwing out such potato peels, we wanted to take it and cook it and eat it, yeah? They wouldn't let us. Pele said ribkes, you know. Zarazes, you started calling us names. That we will bring in all kind of diseases, you know, by eating that stuff, we'll bring in all kind of diseases. But later, when things got real bad, and they started already to starve too, so they started eating those potatoes too. And the Litvakers, they don't say stink. They say herzach. You can listen, you know. They said different. So they said, it's herzach hamayachel. It stinks, it's a pleasure. So I remember one Sunday, every second Sunday we had off from work. So I remember the camp director, the German, who came to our back. He came over, and he wanted to walk in, but he went back from that stench, from those potatoes. So yes, what are we doing? How we are doing it? So we said, we do this. So he says, yeah, ohne Salz, without salt. Yeah. So this is the German, you know. So I said, we don't have any salt. So he says, go to the kitchen and tell them that I said to give you salt. So we had put a little bit salt on those stinking potatoes. But it was delicious, you know, we didn't have anything else. But I told the company, I'll fly to Heidelberg. Misschien het moet de komen aan. Kind zit op de aangaan, dus dat is zeker gaat zo de deze maar. Dus het lijkt het wel, zo de ohne Salz. Yeah, get what? Yeah. Jetzt kriegt sie, but it's just unbelievable.
So hier, aber wenn Sie wissen, wie Sie gewinnen, der russische Lager,
Ja.
also lesen den Gulag von Solzhenitsyn.
Oh, did you read the book,
Yeah.
Gulag by
Yeah, Solzhenitsyn.
Solzhenitsyn?
If you just, you
He
know,
described
This
what
is-
was in those
this is
camps. He
original.
was one of those camps
This is
in
original.
Siberia.
this is
Yeah.
original. I told you.